Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to more oddities of the United States. So I reacted to Oddities of the United States, a video by the Geography King about 6 months ago, and I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting learning the quirks of the US geography, you know, certain things, certain like hard to find things in other countries. I really enjoyed it, and recently I discovered that Geography King made a part 2 of that video, so I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this one just as much, or at least I hope I will. So let's do it. All right.
Howdy, it's Kyle with another installment of Oddities of U.S. Geography, where I'll be examining some interesting quirks and features of the geography of the U.S. and a little bit of Canada as well. So with a landmass as large of the U.S., there's bound to be some pretty interesting things. Some of these are well known, and you may have heard of some of this stuff, and some other ones I wasn't aware of until I read about them in the comment section in my other video in this series, and some other ones still, this might be the first time you're hearing about them, but let's get started with some of this weird stuff about the U.S. First, I want to talk about Crater Lake, Oregon, and just how incredibly deep it is. It has a maximum depth of 1,949 feet, which makes it the deepest lake in the U.S. and the 9th deepest lake in the world. It has an average depth of 1,148 feet, which makes it the 3rd deepest lake in the world in terms of average depth.
Hold on, 1,488 feet, so there's about 3 feet in a meter. So that's 500 meters deep. Damn, that is insane. If you can't swim, stay away from Crater Lake. I mean, dude, you do not want to, start panicking in there and you're like, no.
And that's all very impressive, but what makes it even more impressive is that it's not really that big of a lake. It's not even one of the top 100 lakes in the U.S. in terms of area, and there are literally thousands of lakes worldwide larger than Crater Lake. But because the surface area isn't huge while being one of the deepest lakes, it has the highest depth to area ratio of any lake in the world.
Wow.
And also, this happens to be a beautiful national park.
Yeah, it does look really nice. This literally could be like a postcard, or a screensaver.
Next, I want to discuss how the Mississippi River's meandering has caused some pretty interesting situations in terms of state boundaries. Water is very powerful, but it's also pretty lazy. It wants the path of least resistance, so if a river can get to where it's going by using an easier path, it will change course, and a meander might leave a piece of the old river behind as an oxbow lake. And how that affects state borders is that many of the borders were determined to be the river itself. However, when the meander changed course, portions of a state that were supposed to be east of the river are now west of the river.
I see.
There are far too many of these to mention in the video, but most of them are around the Memphis, Tennessee area, southeastern Arkansas, northwestern Mississippi, or northeastern Louisiana. The largest of these oxbows is just south of Vicksburg, Mississippi. And perhaps the strangest one is Fulton County, Kentucky, which is the southwestern corner of the state. This small part of the state is completely cut off from the rest of Kentucky, and the only way to get there by road is from Tennessee.
That is so weird. Why not just make it part of Tennessee? Like, why? Because surely for something to count as part of a state or a city or whatever, surely they've got to be connected, like physically connected.
Another very interesting oxbow is Carter Lake, Iowa. It's right in the middle of the Omaha, Nebraska metropolitan area, and it sits directly adjacent to the Omaha airport. If you look at this aerial photograph, the portions to the right of the airport, which is just west of the airport, is the town of Carter Lake. But a major difference between this one and the Mississippi River oxbows is that those take a long time to create. Those were years and years of meandering and erosion. The one around Carter Lake occurred from one big flood. And take a look at this welcome sign. This is a really cool sign. If your town is an oxbow, you might as well have a welcome sign like this. And staying in Iowa, it's the only state in the country where the entirety of its eastern border and the entirety of its western border is a river. Rivers form a lot of the borders with states, but most also have another type of border, maybe a line of longitude or
I reckon fishing must be so popular here, just because there's so many, like, you've got so much space to, just sit by the river and just toss your rod in there.
Mountain crest or something like that, but for Iowa, 2 of its borders are in completely rivers. And another small one about Iowa, it's the only state in the country where its state abbreviation is 2 vowels. Another spot that's cut off from the rest of its state is the Lost Peninsula in Michigan. This is a small piece of land that is only accessible by road from Ohio. Michigan and Ohio fought to see who would get this area around Toledo. Eventually, it was decided by the courts to use a line of latitude, and this little piece of the peninsula was north of that line of latitude that the Supreme Court drew, and now it's part of Michigan. And Michigan losing this battle is probably why they're still so bitter about Ohio. In terms of what state a city lies in, there's nothing stranger than Texarkana, Texas, and Arkansas. This is effectively one city in which portions of it are in each of the 2 states.
Wow, that is really cool. That's actually Texarkana.
And this is not the same thing as Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas. Those are 2 completely different cities, completely different jurisdictions. Although each half of Texarkana had its own mayor and city council, they do share a lot of city services, and the courthouse and the post office are right along the state line, and there's only one for the 2 of them.
Wow, look at that split right down the middle.
And something else interesting about that is if you live in Texarkana, Arkansas, you don't pay state income taxes as if you lived on the Texas side.
Wow.
So it's the only city in the country that is located within 2 states. Another interesting one about Arkansas is that it borders...
Okay, so what's the difference between... Okay, so if you're like a salaried employee in America, do you pay 2 different taxes? So you pay state income tax and do you pay federal tax as well? Because here in the UK, you just pay one tax and then you pay national insurance, which pays for the NHS. But there's only one actual tax thing, that goes towards tax revenues. So in the US, do you guys pay 2 different ones?
6 states, and you can drive due south from Arkansas into all 6 of the states that it borders. So you can see how the boot heel of Missouri kind of juts to the southwest, and how the northwestern portion of the state has a slanted border with Oklahoma, so you can drive south from there too.
Huh.
For this next one, I want to give credit to Alvin, who commented in my other video about oddities.
God, 27-hour drive. Mate, I could definitely, I just can. Is that even possible to do that in one go? Surely not. No way.
You can drive from Scottsbluff, Nebraska to Savannah, Georgia, which is over 1,700 miles, and only have to pass through Missouri and Tennessee to get there. So if you live in Scottsbluff, you can say, we don't live that far from the Atlantic Ocean. We're only 3 states away. Another interesting quirk about Tennessee and Georgia is something that I see all the time. To drive from Chattanooga to Nashville along I-24, you have to go through a small part of Georgia to do it. It's the only place in the U.S. where you drive from one portion of a state to another along the interstate, but you have to go through another state to do it. And something else interesting about that is that when you cross over into Georgia, it keeps the Tennessee mile markers. Usually when you get to a state line, the mile markers will start over for that new state, but because it's such a small portion of Georgia you drive through, it keeps the Tennessee mile markers.
Interesting.
Another one about Georgia is Savannah along the coast is...
That's a really nice picture. I like this. It kind of reminds me of Europe in a way. Like this, I've seen this sort of building layout in Amsterdam.
Actually south of Tijuana, Mexico. So if you draw a line of latitude from Tijuana all the way east across the U.S., you'll end up right around Hilton Head Island, South Carolina.
Ah.
Just up the road from Tijuana is San Diego, and San Diego has an average high temperature in June of 71 degrees, which just happens to be the same average high temperature in June for Fairbanks, Alaska. Fairbanks does get pretty warm.
Alaska? I thought Alaska was freezing cold year-round.
During the summertime, when temperatures in the 80s can be pretty common.
No way.
It's just so far away from the moderating effects of the ocean, and the sun is shining just all the time in June and July. So yeah, it's just as warm as San Diego in June and July, but in January, it's just a little bit different. Another interesting climate quirk is that Seattle, regardless of how far north it is, averages only 5 inches of snow per year. And compare that to, say, Nashville or Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which average 6 inches of snow per year. You might be thinking, well, because it rains so much, but it does rain a lot, but the amount of rain in Seattle really isn't that much. It only rains about 38 inches a year there.
Interesting, because I've heard Seattle, it rains a ton. People have said Seattle is kind of like London in that way, because we see tons of rain here as well.
And where I live, again in Chattanooga, it averages 53 inches of rain per year.
Whoa.
So a lot of cloudy days in Seattle during the winter, but it's mostly kind of drizzly and light rain and very rarely snow.
I see.
An oddity about time zones is that portions of eastern Oregon are in the mountain time zone, and portions of the Florida Panhandle are in the central time zone, which means there's only a 1 hour time difference between that portion of Oregon and that portion of Florida. And that's the farthest distance in the contiguous U.S. you can be to be only a 1 hour time difference apart. An odd relationship between cities and counties is New York City. New York is the only city in the country where the city government supersedes county governments. Each of the 5 boroughs of New York City is its own county. Manhattan is New York County, Bronx is Bronx County, Queens is Queens County, Brooklyn is Kings County.
Is it normal for one state to have so many counties in there? Or is it usually one county per state? Because I would feel like this is a lot of counties to be in one state.
And Staten Island is Richmond County. I think it would have been cool if Brooklyn would have kept the name Kings, so it would have been Kings and Queens, but either way, New York is the only city like this. For this next oddity, I want to thank commenters Mr. Flibble and Marty who posted this in my other video about oddities. If you start in Stamford or Greenwich, Connecticut, and head due north, due south, due east, or due west, the first state line you're going to get to in all directions is New York.
Wow.
I had to look at the map for this one, but it's because these 2 towns are located in that little nub, which is the southwestern corner of the state. This next one has to do with the strange shape of Maryland, which I think is the weirdest shaped state in the country. The northern border for Maryland is a line of latitude, and the southern border of the panhandle of Maryland is the Potomac River. Nothing strange about that except for the fact that at one point they're only 1 mile apart from each other.
Oh.
So there's a tiny little portion of Maryland where it's only 1 mile wide, separating it from Pennsylvania and West Virginia.
A mile wide.
And somehow I-68 squeezes right in there, so I'm not sure how Maryland worked that one out, but it goes right there. And here are a couple of quirks that the flat earth crowd aren't going to like. One is that the closest state to the...
Is there anyone like watching this video that actually believes that the world is flat? Because I would love to know the rationale behind that, because, you know, you can see the curvature of the earth in so many, shots from the International Space Station, from NASA. So what is it that makes you think the world is flat? Let me know. I genuinely want to know.
African continent is not Florida, it's Maine. You can get from Maine to Morocco more quickly than you can get from Florida to Senegal. So look there, Maine and Morocco, you're not so far apart after all. Another one for the flat earth crowd is that San Francisco and Indianapolis are both the same distance to Delhi, India. They're both about 7,600 miles to Delhi, but of course to fly there you would go in a different direction. Or another way of looking at it is that if you're in Denver, it's the same distance to Delhi, whether you travel east or west.
Wow.
Now here are a couple of interesting geographical quirks about Canada. I want to thank commenter Richard for this one. The southernmost point in Canada is Point Pelee, which is about an hour south of Detroit or Windsor. There are more Americans that live north of this point than in all of Canada combined.
No way.
There are
That's
less
crazy.
than 40 million people that live in Canada, but there are more than 40 million Americans that live north of the southernmost point of Canada.
Yeah, Canada is so sparsely populated. It's almost as big, if not just, maybe even bigger than the United States, yet you've got like 10% of the population.
Another oddity about Canada is just the sheer size and lack of population of Nunavut. It's approximately 725,000 square miles or 1.9 million square kilometers. That's about the same size as Mexico. It's larger than Alaska and nearly 3 times the size of Texas. However, for this enormous area, there are only 36,000 people that live there.
That's nuts.
You do the math, and the population density is 0.0 people per square kilometer or square mile. Now, technically, it's 0.02 people per square kilometer or 0.05 people per square mile, but if you're using just one decimal place, it's 0.0 people per square kilometer or mile. Nunavut makes Central Australia look like Toronto. And the last one that I wanted to mention isn't really an oddity, it's just kind of silly. There's a town in South Carolina called North. It was named after a guy named John.
North South Carolina.
North, so the town's
That's
name
so
is North South Carolina. And 100 miles away is a town called Due West. So one way of putting it is you can say North South Carolina is 100 miles southeast of Due West. So there you have it, some more oddities of U.S. geography. I'll probably post a video like this every now and then, so in the comment section, let me know some other ones that I may have missed.
Yeah, some really, really interesting ones in there. It doesn't surprise me at all, just because, like Kyle mentioned, it's just the US is so massive. It's so big that it's not going to be uniform in every area. You know, when you break it down into the states, break it down further into the cities, you're going to find places that are, you know, just a bit different characteristically than other places. So yeah, I personally love watching videos like this, and I will definitely check to see if there's a part 3. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.